Last night, if you want to know why the Republicans are so relentlessly obsessed with AOC, and frankly, the media is too, it's because you could see this set out. Last night, Donald Trump goes on, he gives a 5-minute speech. It appears, and I haven't seen reporting specifically to this effect, but it appears that they must have chickened out about declaring a state of emergency, because if there was a time to do it, it was last night. Like, you can't go up on a Tuesday and say things are really bad at the border, and then expect to come back on Friday. Like, in fact, it's a state of emergency. You can't do that, right? Like, if it's not a state of emergency last night, there's no way it can be a state of emergency on Friday. Now, look, they can do whatever they want, and they're going to. But that doesn't explain why they didn't do it last night. Because the only thing that's going to happen going forward is that, and you have now already, I think it's 3 or 4 Republican senators who are already starting to wave the white flag. And Donald Trump last night could have said, it's a state of emergency. I'm going to take money from the military and I'm going to build the wall. Somebody along that process, and I suspect it was either the military themselves or members of the Senate who represent the military, or somewhere along that line, somebody said something serious enough like, you can't do this. And so they didn't. And they were left with this hollow shell of a just jibber jabber. Nobody cared. Nobody cares. I mean, if Donald Trump's not off the teleprompter, it's not fun. And if he's not doing anything, what's the point? Just to prove that he could read a 5-minute speech.
Get everyone's attention. I proved it.
I mean, was there anybody in the country who was like, wow, I've never seen him so emotionally invested. He was really upset about that. Like, at one point he said something like, I held the hands of, I can't even remember who he said he held the hands
Mothers.
Of mothers. And nobody believes that. Who would want to hold his hand?
Germs.
He's never held a hand in his life.
Of course. And I actually touched a cadaver once. And so he went on there. Now, Pelosi and Schumer did exactly what you would anticipate they would do. Anyone in here could have written what they were going to say, and they delivered it, about as inspiringly as you could expect. I did have people who texted me, were like, Chuck Schumer really hit it out of the park. I was like, seriously? Okay. But the bottom line is they basically did what you need to do in those rebuttals. Not embarrass yourself and, just show up so that there's some semblance of like, and from a polling standpoint, it's working, slowly working. I suspect that Mitch McConnell is afraid of bucking Donald Trump right now because he's got to run in 2020. And this is exactly the time that somebody would say, hey, I'm going to run against Mitch McConnell. People forget in 2016, Mitch McConnell was the enemy in the Republican Party. And if he was to cross Donald Trump right now and capitulate at this point to those Republican senators and actually bring a bill up on the floor, continuing resolution, I think he's afraid of Donald Trump saying mean things about him and inspiring a challenge to him.
Cocaine
But
Mitch.
in the absence of that, this is why what AOC does is so important, because Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi are going to play 4 corners. They're just going to make no mistakes, because that has generally been the Democratic recipe for attempting to do something. Really stake out almost no position and wait until, the Republicans overstep their bounds. Now, it has not been terribly successful long term. It might be in this short term moment. But here is AOC on Rachel Maddow, and I don't get the sense this was terribly scripted, because at one point she just goes off, and frankly, this clip is probably going to be the one of the three addresses to what's going on at the border, which really is relative to, at any other time, nothing. This is going to be the one that's going to travel the most and has the most poignance and really is most on point.
And no one should feel unsafe in the United States of America. And that includes our amazing and beautiful and productive immigrant community. And moreover, the one thing that the president has not talked about is the fact that he has systematically engaged in the violation of international human rights human rights on our border. He has separated children from their families. He talked about what happened the day after Christmas. On the day of Christmas, a child died in ICE custody. The president should not be asking for more money to an agency that has systematically violated human rights. The president should be really defending why we are funding such an agency at all. Because right now, what we are seeing is death. Right now, what we are seeing is the violation of human rights. These children and these families are being held in what are called hieleras, which are basically freezing boxes that no person should be maintained in for any amount of time, let alone the amount of time that they're being kept on. And moreover, even if you are anti-immigrant in this country, the majority of immigrant overstays, the majority of the reason that people are undocumented is visa overstay. It's not because people are crossing a border illegally. It is because of visa overstay, which, mind you, he's talking about legal immigration. He's trying to restrict every form of legal immigration there is in the United States. He's fighting against family reunification. He's fighting against the diversity visa lottery. He's fighting against almost every way that people can actually legally enter this country, forcing them to become undocumented, and then he's trying to attack their undocumented status. This is systematic, it is wrong, and it is anti-American. And again, those women and children trying to come here with nothing but the shirts on their back to create an opportunity and to provide for this nation are acting more in an American tradition than this president is right now.
I mean, it's sort of amazing. She's driving the news cycle for like 3 days in a row. And
it's not hard to do that when you're the only person on the mainstream media who's acting like a human being, right?
Well, I mean, I haven't seen it. I mean, it doesn't happen too often. I mean, I think, Bernie got to prominence after running for president. Prior to that, he would never, ever get on the news.
He also had his response, too, was also very effective in his own, also direct kind of no BS way.
More on the fun half.
More exactly. I picture Schumer sort of like if they were on a basketball court, like AOC's just out sinking threes, and then Schumer sidles up. He's like, "Take a look at this." Then proceeds
my guess
not be able to
my guess is that they're happy with this, at least on this topic.
On this topic, definitely.
They're happy with what she's doing because they get to have their, they get to, be the reasonable middle. I honestly, I watched what they said, and the only thing I can remember about what Pelosi and Schumer said was nothing. The only thing I remember was Schumer looking like he wouldn't even acknowledge that Pelosi was next to him as she was talking.
It was very
He was
weird.
just looking very straightforward, and then I noticed he moved a little bit, like he was like I've been in that situation where you're like, how much am I supposed to acknowledge about what she's saying? And it just looked very off.
It looked like American Gothic.
You don't understand how the camera works, Mr. Sex in the City. I had a credit in the 90s, and I go on and on about it. You stare into space, and you let us speak.
He honestly.
I'll see you in 2022, you prick.
But I'm sure he's quite. Happy that she is pushing one end of this argument. I mean, she's there calling for the abolishment of ICE.
This is
Good.
this is where the center left thing works for everybody.
Yes.
In that, and what the Democratic Party is, which is really a coalition of parties. That's what it would be in Europe. And this is an example of, how that actually works in concert together. Because right now, of course, the longer term goals are abolish ICE and so on. But the short term goal right now is crush Trump and do anything you can on things like temporary protective status for Haitians and DACA. And they're actually in concert on this right now.